Tonight on News 5 Live, Prime Minister John Briceño in his inaugural New Year's address declares that Belize is broke as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The central bank has determined that Belize's economy shrank by 17.1% in 2020. Major crimes are down by 30% in 2020. The Belize Crime Observatory says that this decline in major crimes puts Belize's murder rate at 25 per 100,000, which makes it the country's lowest murder rate since 2013. And Justice Minette Hafiz Bertram is virtually sworn in as the acting president of the Belize Court of Appeal. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
Currently, we're using Smart Elite Vibe color.
Good evening. Welcome to News 5 Live for Wednesday, December 30th. I am Marlene Cuellar. Belize's economy remains in dire straits as the country's productive sectors continue to grapple with the crippling effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. It has been 6 weeks since the People's United Party assumed office as the new government of Belize, And what it discovered upon taking over from the previous administration is that the public purse is all but empty. The dismal announcement comes amid Prime Minister John Briceño's maiden New Year's address. In the 12-minute statement, the Prime Minister reflects on the challenges of the past 12 months, including the public health and economic impacts of the virulent disease. Perhaps the centerpiece of what the Prime Minister shares is the fact that the previous administration was borrowing at a rate of $1 million per day to remain afloat. Along with that was a failure to meet its external debt obligation. It's a cheerless way to bring in a new year, but it is a reality that Prime Minister Briceño says Belizeans must face.
When we assumed office, we found the treasury empty. The former administration was borrowing $1 million per day to meet expenses. Imagine, they had to borrow every single month to meet payroll. That is bankruptcy, pure and simple. Last August, the Barrow administration failed to pay the US $13 million Superbond payment when it became due. Instead, they added this amount to the principal, thereby increasing Belize's foreign debt and deferring the inevitable. The rating agencies downgraded Belize yet again. The important takeaway is that due to mismanagement by the Barrow administration, they could not make the payment, and Belize was financially embarrassed on the world stage. As a result of COVID-19, the Barrow administration borrowed more than $200 million in 2020. The Belizean economy was in recession before COVID-19 gripped us. The situation worsened in the second, third, and fourth quarters, and we estimate that the Belizean economy will shrink by 15% in 2020. The overall fiscal deficit is now in excess of $500 million, or 12% of GDP, and our debt to GDP will increase to 133%. The acceptable standard is 60%. While economists who analyze and keep track of these statistics will be alarmed by these figures, they tell a simple tale to all. Belize broke.
Like the Prime Minister, Minister of State in the Ministry of Finance Christopher Koyi is predicting major headwinds in the future. Koyi appeared on Open Your Eyes this morning, where he described the challenges that the government is facing on both the micro and macro levels. He revealed that by day's end on Thursday, the economy would have shrunk by an unprecedented 17.1%. He also revealed that the debt to GDP ratio continues to grow and currently stands at 134%. From a fiscal standpoint, Koyi says that the country is weak.
Economy-wise, we have major headwinds, as some would say. In front of us, we have a lot of challenges, both on a micro and a macro level. And I think if we look at some of the numbers I can speak to, the economy is expected, I think Central Bank has indicated as much, that the economy will shrink for the entire year of 2020, roughly 17.1%. That's obviously unprecedented since independence, and I would say in generations, for that to happen in 1 year. Our debt to GDP, which is the second key component or key indicator, is approaching 135% of GDP. It's over 134.1% as of the end of October. We keep borrowing roughly, or a little under $1 million a day. To put it simply, if you have in your household, you have to borrow to pay your bills, then you know you're in trouble. And that's exactly what the government has been doing even before COVID, but since COVID, that has actually ramped up substantially. So it's from a fiscal standpoint, we are in a very weak position, and fiscally there's very little that can be done, or the government is very constrained in looking at how it can jumpstart the economy.
And while the government intends to reveal its plans for economic recovery in 2021, following a round of consultations, Briceño assured Belizeans that the government will not be imposing any new revenue-collecting measures. He went as far as saying that they have decided to postpone the increase of Social Security contributions, which was to come on stream next month.
Next week, we will present a supplementary budget in the House of Representatives and present revised estimates of revenue and expenditure for the last quarter of this very unusual year. We will not propose any new revenue measures. We will also present bills to the House which initiate our reform agenda. These bills will be tabled and referred to committees to give interested persons an opportunity to consult and offer comments on our proposals. In an effort to stimulate more economic activity and ensure that employees have more disposable income and employers more finances to operate, we consulted with the actuary of the Social Security Board, who has advised that we can defer the dual increase of the ceiling and contribution rate scheduled to begin in January 2021. Therefore, as the Prime Minister and Minister responsible for Social Security, along with Cabinet, we decided to postpone the increase in the payments that was due in 2021.
And so, on the heels of what Briceño describes as a Brooke government, the new administration will need to make real sacrifices by instituting serious belt-tightening measures. Briceño says that in the coming weeks, we will know what actions the government will take to begin the economic recovery in 2021. But while that's a wait and see, Briceño did not mince words when it comes to taking actions against what he calls widespread corruption and criminality carried out during the Barrow administration. Briceño says that in the coming days, his government will reveal the extent of corruption and fiscal mismanagement, and that they will be taking action, going as far as the court to hold those accountable. In his words, Briceño says, quote, "There will be no sacred cows," unquote.
In good conscience, before we ask Belizeans to do so, those who brought us to this point must be held to account. In the days and weeks ahead, my government will be revealing to the Belizean people the extent of the stealing, criminality, and corruption that was perpetrated by the Barrow administration. Valuable lands are now in the hands of UDP cronies, given away for a pittance. Contracts valued hundreds of millions of dollars were awarded to favorite contractors who failed to pay millions in taxes and fees. State enterprises bought properties at gross overvalues, leaving institutions saddled with millions in debt for no legitimate purpose. Cronies signed contracts in the run-up to the elections and are now demanding massive payouts to be released from contracts. Public officers were required to use government equipment and fuel to build roads on private property and to clear massive ranches. The theft and corruption were widespread and unprecedented. This cannot, should not, and will not be allowed to be forgotten. There will be investigations and, where warranted, criminal charges laid. Where appropriate, civil action for recovery will be brought before the courts. There will be no sacred cows.
Coming up, the Belize Crime Observatory says major crimes are down considerably in 2020.
My fellow Belizeans, very soon 2020 will end and we will welcome the advent of 2021. As a nation, we will look back at 2020 with very mixed feelings, and rightly so. It was a year of unprecedented floods associated with hurricanes Nana, Eta, and Iota, which caused more than $100 million in damage to the Belizean economy. People lost their property, farmers lost their crops and livestock, and public infrastructure was seriously damaged. If this was not enough, we experienced a drought that affected produce and farmers lost again. The COVID-19 pandemic brought our economy to a near halt. Over 236 Belizeans lost their lives to COVID, and more than 10,000 tested positive. About 45,000 persons lost their jobs, and many businesses closed as a result of the measures imposed to fight the virus. COVID-19 dramatically changed the way we work, the way we live, and the world we know. But 2020 was not all bad. Hundreds of Belizeans, along with Cuban collaborators, faced the virus and provided care and control as we implemented measures to curb its spread. Those frontline workers are our heroes. Because of the lockdown and other restrictions, many new micro, small and medium-sized businesses were spawned. This showed our Belizean creativity and an entrepreneurial spirit never before seen. We now have more Belizean businesses. As a result of border closures, we became tourists in our own country in record numbers. We rediscovered the exotic beauty of this our land and the warm hospitality of our people. On 11 November 2020, voters went to the polls, braved the COVID-19 virus, and elected a new PUP government with an overwhelming majority. The electorate endorsed the proposals in our Plan Belize. We received 59% of the popular vote. Without doubt, my government has a strong mandate for change. 2020 was truly a year of change. Change because Belizeans needed to change what was, and because Belizeans want a better future. When we assumed office, we found the treasury empty. The former administration was borrowing $1 million per day to meet expenses. Imagine, they had to borrow every single month to meet payroll. That is bankruptcy, pure and simple. Last August, the Barrow administration failed to pay the US $13 million superbond payment when it became due. Instead, they added this amount to the principal, thereby increasing Belize's foreign debt and deferring the inevitable. The rating agencies downgraded Belize yet again. The important takeaway is that due to mismanagement by the Barrow administration, they could not make the payment, and Belize was financially embarrassed on the world stage. As a result of COVID-19, the Barrow administration borrowed more than $200 million in 2020. The Belizean economy was in recession before COVID-19 gripped us. The situation worsened in the second, third, and fourth quarters, and we estimate that the Belizean economy will shrink by 15% in 2020. The overall fiscal deficit is now in excess of $500 million, or 12% of GDP, and our debt to GDP will increase to 133%. The acceptable standard is 60%. While economists who analyze and keep track of these statistics will be alarmed by these figures, they tell a simple tale to all. Belize broke. We believe that Belizeans should know why things are so bad. We all deserve to know how we reached this deplorable state. Because of UDP mismanagement and corruption, we will all be asked to make major sacrifices in 2021 as we seek to right the ship of state. In good conscience, before we ask Belizeans to do so, those who brought us to this point must be held to account. In the days and weeks ahead, my government will be revealing to the Belizean people the extent of the stealing, criminality, and corruption that was perpetrated by the Barrow administration. Valuable lands are now in the hands of UDP cronies, given away for a pittance. Contracts valued hundreds of millions of dollars were awarded to favorite contractors who failed to pay millions in taxes and fees. State enterprises bought properties at gross overvalues, leaving institutions saddled with millions in debt for no legitimate purpose. Cronies signed contracts in the run-up to the elections and are now demanding massive payouts to be released from contracts. Public officers were required to use government equipment and fuel to build roads on private property and to clear massive ranches. The theft and corruption were widespread and unprecedented. This cannot, should not, and will not be allowed to be forgotten. There will be investigations and, where warranted, criminal charges laid. Where appropriate, civil action for recovery will be brought before the courts. There will be no sacred cows. It is against this miserable reality that we must turn to face 2021. The new year presents us with near insurmountable obstacles. The challenges ahead are difficult. The choices we face are tough. To suppress the spread of COVID-19, we have created the COVID-19 Task Force. This task force will be guided by science and has a mandate to recommend such measures as are required to protect us all. We're engaged with friendly countries and others seeking to bring the vaccine to Belize as soon as reasonably possible. To bounce back better, we must defeat coronavirus. I have appointed the Economic Recovery Advisory Team, which is comprised of a cross-section of the community, to make recommendations to government on restoring economic growth, job creation, and attracting investment. This is in keeping with our Plan Belize commitment to govern in a consultative manner. We have been carefully reviewing the government's financial position. It is fragile and unsustainable. It is clear that to return Belize to a path of sustainability, major changes will be required in 2021. We are preparing a plan which we will shortly share with stakeholders. We intend to consult widely with a view to agreeing on a set of measures required to turn things around. We will bounce back better. Next week, we will present a supplementary budget in the House of Representatives and present revised estimates of revenue and expenditure for the last quarter of this very unusual year. We will not propose any new revenue measures. We will also present bills to the House which initiate our reform agenda. These bills will be tabled and referred to committees to give interested persons an opportunity to consult and offer comments on our proposals. In an effort to stimulate more economic activity and ensure that employees have more disposable income and employers more finances to operate, we consulted with the actuary of the Social Security Board, who has advised that we can defer the dual increase of the ceiling and contribution rate scheduled to begin in January 2021. He went further stating, and I quote, that the dual increase would have a detrimental impact on employment, end of quote. He also stated that an updated actuarial report sent to the Social Security Board several weeks ago states that the impact of COVID-19 on the actuarial situation of the SSB has been less than anticipated. Therefore, as the Prime Minister and Minister responsible for Social Security, along with Cabinet, we decided to postpone the increase in the payments that was due in 2021. Pope John Paul II said, "The future starts today, not tomorrow." This is true. The challenges of the future call us to act today. When tested, Belizeans respond. As a people, we have always faced our challenges secure in the knowledge that we will succeed. It is the indomitable Belizean resolve that girds us, the spirit of our ancestors that energizes us, and our hope and vision for a better life that inspires us to overcome. We know not what the year before us brings. That is the order of nature. But our undying faith in our Creator gives us confidence. The Bible teaches that faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Let us bring in 2021 safely. Let us adhere to the protocols and try to minimize the spread of COVID-19. And to Belizeans everywhere, I offer health, happiness, and God's blessings for 2021. Happy New Year. Feliz Año Nuevo.
Major crimes are down across the board by as much as 30% in 2020. The Belize Crime Observatory has analyzed data compiled by the Belize Police Department and other agencies, and the numbers are looking better than 2019. In the major crimes category, for example, murders have decreased by over 20%. Today, the technical coordinator, Adeli Ramos of the Belize Crime Observatory, shares more about the numbers and what their analysis shows on the shift in crimes recorded in Belize this year.
These are 5 categories of crimes: burglary, robbery, murder, theft, unlawful sexual intercourse, and rape. And we see where, for all categories, there's been a decline for the period January to November 2020 relative to the same period last year. So overall, major crimes are down 30%. In terms of where we were last year, we also saw a decline in major crimes last year for the similar period. However, the decline that we've seen this year is far more substantial. So last year's decline was 8%. This year's decline is 30%. And a lot of that had to do with, of course, what has changed on the ground. So we've had a lot of heavy policing on the ground, particularly in the context of enforcing COVID-19 measures, but also targeted interventions by the police department to address gang violence, gang crimes. And this was in advance of us even recording our first case of COVID-19 in Belize, and that's been sustained over much of the period. So those interventions actually account for this major decline in major crimes, and particularly where we saw murders now being down by 21% for that period. So the biggest decline, of course, is in the Belize district area, but we see where, for example, in the case of Corozal and Stan Creek, there's been an increase. For Toledo, it's on par with where it was for the same period last year. So when we look at the sex dimension, male, females, about 9 in 10 of murder victims continue to be males.
The Belize Crime Observatory says that the data shows that the murder rate for 2020 will be the lowest in 7 years. Interestingly, the BCO says that across the Central American countries recorded declines in homicides.
Now, given where we are with the numbers, we are projecting that the murder rate for Belize will be at around 25 per 100,000, and this would be the lowest rate we've seen since 2013. But if we look at the regional picture, it's not just Belize that has been seeing a decline. There are other countries. So the Infosegura countries, for example, Guatemala, Honduras, Costa Rica, El Salvador, they've also been seeing a decline there. And our biggest percentage decline has been recorded in El Salvador, followed by Guatemala, then Belize, then Honduras, then Costa Rica. For quite a long time, homicides have been among the top leading killers in Belize, right? And we see where for every district, homicides have ranked among the top 10 killers in Belize. And if we look, for example, at where we were in 2010 versus where we were in 2019, you see assault homicides, it's ranked more or less like 5th among the leading causes of death. Heart disease is still the leading killer in Belize, but homicides rank way up there. And I put COVID-19 there because I think we are well over 200 COVID-related deaths right now. And so this information is usually compiled early in the year, and so we wouldn't have figures for 2020 yet. But based on the way things are going, we could very well see COVID-19 being listed there among the leading causes of death.
Continuing with our focus on the Ministry of New Growth's foray into hemp production, in early 2021, a meeting will be convened with stakeholders and other interested parties in the up-and-coming industry to see how policies can be implemented to guide the sector forward. Taking a progressive approach, Minister Karim Musa is already looking at the possibility of cannabis tourism, which, once it becomes a reality, will see visitors participating in the industry as consumers of various products. The idea, first of all, is to ensure transparency within the market.
One of the very first steps that we will be undertaking, because we don't want to be like the former administration, is to be very open and transparent. And so by the middle of January to the ending of January, we will be having our first virtual Zoom with stakeholders, with business people, with other consultants, with other experts, so to speak, who want to get into this particular industry, who want to be able to develop this policy. Once that policy can be developed and can be agreed upon by all, or at least a majority, we can then take that policy to cabinet and thereafter take that policy to the House in the form of legislation. It is my hope that we would see the benefit of even cannabis tourism in Belize. Just imagine for 1 second, Jules, the amount of cruise ships, whenever that does return, the cruise ships that come into our harbor, it's over 1 million people a year. Imagine those people coming off of those ships actually engaging in cannabis tourism, the amount of revenue that can be generated for Belize. And so we have to find ways, Jules, in order to make this not just a productive sector that can generate revenue for the country, but also an industry that would provide jobs for all of the people who have been affected by this cannabis industry. In the past, there are so many people that are imprisoned because of cannabis. And so we have to find ways for those particular people, the most marginalized people, to benefit from this industry. So leading the way forward is we're going to have to be very creative, very innovative in coming up with a policy that works for Belize.
The question of legalization, as well as amendments to existing laws, insofar as the issuance of licenses and the cultivation of cannabis, is also taking center stage in the ongoing discussion. According to Minister Musa, revising the laws is necessary, particularly where compliance is concerned.
A lot of these individuals and companies who got licenses are mere speculators. It reminds me a lot of like the oil industry. People get licenses, but they have absolutely no history, no involvement in oil. Similarly, they have no investment or experience in hemp, but yet they're getting into it. And so that is why it's important for us to engage consultants from across the world who know about these things, who are experts in this field, in order for us to succeed.
Will there be any amendment to the existing legislation to allow for this kind of activity without it being illegal?
There would absolutely have to be amendments to the law. In addition, we would have to provide regulations. In my opinion, it is an industry that has to be highly regulated. Unlike the current hemp licenses that have been issued, those are not being regulated at all. Under the Misuse of Drugs Act, it only states that you're allowed to grow industrial hemp. There is no regulation, and so it is treated like any other commodity, like corn. So you get your license and you go out into the field and you start planting hemp, but there's nobody, there's no compliance officers, no inspectors, no monitors in place to go and check to ensure that the particular hemp that you are growing does not exceed the 0.3% THC and then make it into marijuana, because there is that 0.3% limit in terms of the THC. And so we don't have anybody in country right now that is doing that type of compliance checking. And so we have a runaway train, really, but at the same time we have a blank canvas when it comes to cannabis, because we have not started it yet. Yes, it is practiced and smoked recreationally up to 10 grams in Belize, but at the same time, the law makes no sense and makes no benefit for Belizeans the way it currently is structured.
Justice Minette Hafiz Bertram has been elevated to acting president of the Belize Court of Appeal. Earlier today, during a virtual swearing-in, the High Court judge was administered the oath of office by Governor General Sir Colville Young. Justice Hafiz Bertram will remain in that capacity until further notice from the Prime Minister, who will advise the GG of his appointee after meeting with opposition leader Patrick Faber. Justice Hafiz Bertram is originally from Guyana and took her seat on the bench of the Court of Appeal in 2013. Her swearing-in was witnessed by Attorney General Magali Marin Young. After the break, Dr. Marvin Manzanero details his battle with COVID-19.
Christmas season is a time for us to come together and enjoy the festivities as one. But this year, the pandemic has forced us to celebrate differently. Rather than despair, let us welcome and approach this season with a renewed spirit, a time for reflection, and most importantly, a time for thanksgiving and prayer. Many of our neighbors are facing difficult times. If we have a little more, let us open our hearts to share with those who have a little less. As you know, many of our brothers and sisters have lost the battle to this virus. We unite with their loved ones in prayer and take up the mantle to defeat this pandemic in their names. While we can't have a party, we have life. And while finances may be limited, we have hope. As the minister with the responsibility for the health and wellness of our citizenry, I urge you to abide by the regulations, stay at home, celebrate virtually, and let us flatten the curve. As a people, we are resilient and we can defeat COVID, but we must all do our part so that we ensure that 2021 will be a year of renewal, reset, and the start to our country bouncing back. In closing, I would like to wish all Belizeans at home and abroad, and in particular my beloved constituents of Kayonert, a safe and Merry Christmas, and a new year filled with health and prosperity. Feliz Navidad, Prospero Año, y mucha felicidad.
On behalf of the Ministry of Health and Wellness and all frontline healthcare workers, we would like to wish you all a safe and blessed Christmas and a happy new year filled with hope, good health, and aspiration.
De parte del Ministerio de Salud y Bienestar, les deseamos una feliz Navidad y un próspero año nuevo, siempre cuidadosamente.
From a part of the Ministry of Health and Wellness, I want to wish you a safe Christmas and a prosperous New Year.
Sa kwentli ministro rehab lahteng retin juam, cherili rip sali ralankil ut sali akchiap.
Research on the impact of COVID-19 infection on pregnant women is limited. Right now, pregnant women are at higher risk of severe illness than the general population. Pregnancy can affect the way a woman's body handles respiratory infections. If you are pregnant, protect yourself against COVID-19. Wash hands frequently using soap and water for at least 40 seconds. Use alcohol-based hand sanitizer if soap and water are not available. Cover cough or sneeze with tissue and throw used tissue in a bin. Clean and disinfect frequently touched surfaces such as doorknobs, counters, phones, and tablets. Practice physical distancing. Work from home if possible. Avoid contact with anyone who has fever, cough, and cold or flu-like symptoms. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth without first washing your hands with soap and water. If you have fever, cough, and feel extra tired, call 0800-MOH-CARE. Help keep Belize safe.
Every day, women and men in Belize become victims of gender-based violence, which results in emotional, sexual, financial, and physical abuse. Are you a survivor of gender-based violence and in imminent danger? Don't be afraid. There are ways you can get help. You can call our free emergency numbers at 0800-A-WAY-OUT or text or WhatsApp 672-9628 or call 911 to make a report at any time of the day or night. A police officer will assist you. You can also contact the Women and Family Support Department for women abuse or the Department of Human Services for child abuse in your district to discuss options for temporary housing or medium to long-term care and psychosocial support. You can also go directly to the family or magistrate court and obtain a protection order that restrains the abuser from coming in contact with you, or apply for an occupation and tenancy order that orders the abuser to leave the home for the period of time they see fit. Visiting your nearest hospital or polyclinic for medical attention or further referrals is also something you can do. Together, we can end gender-based violence in Belize. We are here to help you. This message is brought to you by the National Women's Commission with funding from the Engender and Spotlight projects, with support from the Department of Youth Services.
Caused the intense flooding overnight in the western and southern parts of the country.
Yeah?
Do we need to renew the insurance policy?
The insurance policy?
Were impassable.
Oh, let me check.
Renew your policies, file a claim, and even send us a message using RFNG online.
Now we're good. It says we're covered.
Okay, great.
It pays to get it right with RFNG Insurance, a Road Group company.
Welcome to Belize Healthcare Partners Limited, where the health and wellness of the youngest members of your family are important to us.
We are offering here all the care of the babies, newborns, adolescents, toddlers. We also have a neonatal area in case a baby needs a NICU. We have an ICU area for pediatric patients, offering treatment for asthma or patients after a surgery or any other emergency that the kids have. We have an emergency with all the equipment and all the nurses, especially for the babies and the kids.
For child-friendly pediatric and neonatal care, call us at 223-7870 today.
Belize Healthcare Partners Limited, your leader in healthcare.
Currently, we're using Smart Elite VoIP calling plan. We use it interbranch, we use it to call outside, and we also use it to call international. It's far cheaper than what we used to have before. Our new PBX box is new. So the PBX is very good because I can call to my Sartaneja branch, I can call to my Kicalca branch, I can call to San Pedro branch, and there's no cost using the PBX. Actually, right now, since we're in different locations, I can call main office from where I am at a no cost using the PBX system. I would recommend it, sure I would, especially the big enterprises who has a lot of employees. There's a lot of reduction in costs, 50% of saving. But that on a year, it's a lot of money that we're saving. Money that we could return to our members, since we give back dividend to our members.
Visit our showroom or call 670-6710 to find out how Smart's corporate plan and PBX systems can benefit your business. Consultation is free.
Today's COVID-19 data shows that 9,689 persons have recovered from the deadly COVID-19 virus. One of those persons is Dr. Marvin Manzanero. He's at home recovering after he contracted the virus in early December. Dr. Manzanero had to be hospitalized after the virus took a toll on his body. He lost almost 20 pounds and he's still trying to get back on his 2 feet. Manzanero appeared on Open Your Eyes this morning, where he detailed his battle with COVID-19.
I really don't know where I got it to begin with, and I think that's something that we need to stress for everybody. The first, I remember a Friday. This Friday is going to be 4 weeks. I started with an itchy throat, and I was feverish. So from the moment I felt that, I started to kind of isolate myself at home. That was a Friday. Saturday, I didn't really have any symptoms. Sunday, I didn't really have any symptoms. Monday, I went to work. And towards the afternoon, I started feeling a little bit weak, I think. And I had a public activity that afternoon. I didn't go, and I went to get a rapid test on Friday, that Monday evening. That Monday evening, December 7th, I think is the date. And the result, I was driving back home and I was told. On the Tuesday and Wednesday, I was really just kind of watching what was happening with myself. I was really just on the basic medications, ibuprofen, vitamin supplements. I think I was thinking zinc tablets. Nothing else. I wasn't having any symptom. On Thursday, just 3 days after being diagnosed, I started feeling maybe a little bit more tired, but still no fever. On the Friday, I started having a little bit of fever, and so I started antibiotics on that Friday. That was the Friday before I went to the hospital. And I was just tired. I think that's the thing that usually comes about, is just being tired. And on the Saturday, I think I was a little bit more tired. And I have a watch that tracks your heart rate and those kinds of things. and my heart rate was going a little bit high that Saturday morning when I wasn't feeling too well. So that's when I went for a CAT scan, and then I went to the hospital.
You had pneumonia?
I had infiltrates on both lungs, in the bases, and some were starting to appear on the upper portion of the lungs.
Sorry, Doc, I don't know what that means. It infiltrates?
Yes.
Infiltrates as small lesions, and as if you're going to be having a viral pneumonia.
Okay.
In both bases, and they were starting to spread to the upper portions of the lungs.
An additional COVID-19 death was recorded today. This puts the figure at a total COVID-19 deaths of 242. The case fatality rate stands at 2.26%, while the positivity rate stands at 21.2%. 57 new cases were confirmed today, increasing the total number of confirmed cases to 10,724. 85 persons are under investigation, with 22 patients hospitalized, 6 who were admitted in the ICU. According to the Acting Director of Health Services, Dr. Melissa Diaz, the figures are decreasing over the past few weeks.
We have noticed over the last week the trend to be the positivity rate is coming down a little bit. As I have explained in the past, we don't really have a perfect curve as other places may have reported. It's more like spikes, and then it drops a little bit, and then some spikes again, and it goes a little bit. In fact, we're coming down from our fourth spike for this year. And over the Christmas, and I believe along with some of the restrictions being put in place, we are seeing slightly reduced numbers. I'm very cautious saying that because certain things can cause a spike again. But we do know that over the last week, we've had a positivity rate from between 15% up to about 23%. So that's more or less on average 20%, 19% positivity rate.
Is it your belief then that after this Christmas break, those figures would continue to decrease, or is it that we expect another spike?
Well, with any major event in a country, we do expect perhaps the numbers will go up a little bit. We're hoping it won't be like the spike just previously due to the stricter restrictions that are now being implemented and enforced, and also due to us trying to really do a lot more health education and putting out more commercials, advertisements, collaborating with other NGOs and other partners as well to try to get the message out.
One figure that keeps decreasing is the number of active cases. Today's data shows that there are 794 active cases. This is a major decrease from the number of active cases recorded just a few days ago, when the figure was more than 1,000. According to Acting Director of Health Services, Dr. Melissa Diaz, the figure reflects patients who have clinically recovered.
When we report data, we've got to really look at the information that the public is really asking. So we want to simplify this in January. You would see that there is a difference between number of tests run and number of persons tested. So the number of tests run does not necessarily mean that that's equivalent to the number of persons tested. A person may have been re-swabbed, they may have gotten a third swab. It may have been a negative from a rapid test and now they've gone on to do a PCR. So that number will not equal, so it's not 2 over 10 is 5. It won't equal that. You'd have to look at the number of persons tested as the denominator and the positive rate as and the number of positive tests as the numerator. And that would give us the positivity rate. So we are looking at simplifying that data and ensuring that when the general public looks at it, they can definitely say, okay, these numbers are matching. I wanted to take this opportunity to clarify as well with regards to the clinically recovered cases, because I know that this has been a question from many people, and I always see it being asked. There are two different ways that a country can actually say if somebody has recovered or clinically or laboratory. Now we do know from evidence, from guidance from CDC, WHO, the EU, that after 9 or 10 days, you are unlikely to be infectious. Now I really want to make the clarification with the clinically recovered cases, because what we have decided at the Ministry of Health is that we had implemented, and I sent out a memo to the regional management team, not to the general public on a whole, to say that at this point, persons can be deemed clinically recovered if, and I had jotted down 3 or 4 different criteria that they have to meet. So I wanted to make it clear that it's not that, okay, today I'm day 14, I am clinically recovered. You don't determine that on your own, nor does your employer. It should be somebody from the Ministry of Health or a doctor, nurse in the private sector who has been guided by what is determined as clinically recovered.
When we come back, the hustle and bustle outside of the police department in Belmopan, where applicants scramble to meet the deadline.
We all know the importance of running water
The deadline for the submission of applicants for persons interested in joining the Belize Police Department is Thursday. Over the past 2 days, the headquarters in Belmopan has been busy with activity as hundreds of applicants have visited the office to drop off their resumes. It was quite an interesting sight to see that many people lining up to hand-deliver their applications. News 5's Isani Caetano reports.
Unemployment amid the ravages of the COVID-19 pandemic has left many in a precarious position. Without work, bills begin to accumulate rather quickly, and the cost of living seems overly high. On December 17th, the Briceño administration announced that an additional 225 new constables will join the ranks of the Belize Police Department. For some, it is an exciting time. An opportunity is finally here for them to realize their dreams in law enforcement. For others, desperation brought about by joblessness is driving them in this direction.
Over the last couple of weeks, there has been a lot of excitement because of this opportunity that has arisen. We have over 40,000 Belizeans who are currently unemployed at the moment. And what we are seeing now, because we only have, remember, 225 spaces available, so we're seeing in very large numbers young people coming out, highly qualified young people, some even with bachelor's degrees, applying to become police officers. So while it is a challenging time for us in Belize, it is a great opportunity for the Belize Police Department to tap into our most qualified individuals out there with very high degrees who are applying. So I think that we'll have a very high caliber intake 95 coming up shortly.
In Belmopan these past few days, the lines have been snaking as scores of men and women are trying to beat Thursday's deadline. Applicants from across the country have converged at the Belize Police Department's headquarters, as well as its training academy, to submit their forms. Of the thousands who have applied, only a select few will be chosen.
It was an issue that has already been raised at the cabinet level and it was approved. Jules, what I can tell you is that we already had it in our budget for this year to have another additional intake of 170 officers. And so the additional budget was only to find 50 or so more, a budget for 50 or more officers to be joining the force. So it's not a lot that we had to look for in addition to. And so that made it a lot easier. I don't think I could have gotten away taking to cabinet 225 and asking the government to find that money at this time.
Intake 95 is set to commence in January. Reporting for News 5, I am Isani Caetano.
And that's the news. Tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at News 5 Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us. And from all of us here at News 5, please remember to wash your hands, keep your social distance, and stay safe. Good night.